Well, good late Sunday evening. This is Install coming to our Module 4 weekly reflection. And this week we did Intercultural Communications. And so, without further ado, we'll kind of get into this week and reflect back on everything that we learned. All right, so the objectives. Kind of want to pull back a little bit and just go over real quick what culture is. And what culture do we operate in? And by that, I mean myself. We did an interview with some of my colleagues from work, and just kind of share their thoughts and opinions on some things of what leaders do well, feedback wise, and what leaders can improve upon. Um, Go over any kind of surprises that we found out from this week, any changes that will be made from what we learned, and so go over some things kind of tying in the other modules and what we learned so far back together and tie it all into one. All right, so what is culture? So culture, I just went and found kind of a really snippet definition of what kind of it is. And culture in general refers to the cumulative collection of knowledge, experience, and beliefs, values, attitudes, and learned behaviors of a group of people. Culture, in a short term, is just describes who we are as people. Now that culture varies from group to group. And it kind of breaks down later on. I'll explain how it kind of breaks down into different social levels. But we have different theories of culture. We have culture relativism, which believes one group does not use themselves or does not view themselves as superior or inferior to others. These typically are your more open-minded cultures, willing to learn and accept others, which then you translate into the other theory of the opposite of that, which is culture. I'm going to butcher this word, but culture ethno-necroticism, which believes that one culture is superior to others. So I would say back, 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, more towards in America, let's use America as an example, time frame, prior to the civil rights movement, there was a lot of cultural division going on in the world, and ever since that movement, we've kind of, as a whole, as a country as a whole, we started to come more together. We started to accept other different cultures' backgrounds, and we're starting to reach out and learn more about one another instead of just dividing. And I guess you could argue in today's day and age we're kind of reverting back to that, but I like to look at the positive side and think that even though a lot of bad that you see in the world, we're still coming together as a group. And then here's the layers I talked about. So there's layers of culture, right? So there's national, so you have your national level. So you look at your countries, your continents, as a whole. There's the culture there that kind of breaks down more your regional. Perfect example like that. It's college football season, right? So me being from Ohio, now I know the state is divided all over, but a majority of us are Ohio State fans, right? And that's more of a regional thing. When you break it down smaller to community level stuff like that, then maybe like your local high school football team and things like that. But also other layers of culture you have. You have genders. You have generational. That's a big thing nowadays. You see we have millennials and Generation X and all that stuff. Those different cultures and kind of how they perceive the world and how they view one another. And then you have your social. Obviously, in today's day and age, is a hot topic. Your social cultures, things like that, and then tie it back into kind of every riddle. What we're doing here, we're learning about corporate. So there's different corporate culture, the culture in corporate. Here in the next slide, I believe I'll go kind of, since I'm military, dive more into what military culture is like. And then there's reconciliation of cultural differences. So how do we reconcile this? So we identify. We discuss, we talk about one another, and we have general awareness, right? That we know that other cultures exist, and that we know not our only thoughts and ideas are the other ones out there, and other people have other ideas and thoughts. And that's kind of how you reconcile the differences. That's in a nutshell. That's easy to say, but obviously we struggle as a whole still with this and accepting other people's cultures. So did a little digging, kind of found this interesting. It's actually something we learned about in our professional development in the military about the cultural iceberg. Now I kind of tied it back and once again into a company iceberg, but it goes one and the same. The framework for understanding what culture means. So you have your top of your iceberg, which are your observable things. So your culture, external presentation, your values and customs. Those are the things that people see that are just obvious to the eye. Then you go underwater and you have your invisible, what people can't see, and that kind of is like your purposes, kind of biases you have. Authority can be an issue in that, and those just certain things are the things that aren't perceived and are kind of buried below eyesight, and sometimes they need to be recognized in order to accept the whole of the iceberg, right? So it helps build that reconciling culture differences. So this is kind of more, like I said, geared towards what I do military wise. So culture I operate in, the operational culture is the military. So things that we live and we're known by is our discipline, our teamwork, our self-sacrifice, our loyalty and fighting spirit. And not to go over in time and stuff like that, but I attached that website right there as a scholarly article written by the United States Marine Corps, but it just highlights the history of cultural awareness throughout the military. Give it a read; it's pretty interesting to look at. So my interview that I did with my colleagues, selection strategy, there wasn't much to it. Obviously, I work in an office that's relatively not too big. I have a good genre, or not genre, but a good mixture of culture. So I just made sure I just selected 3 people that I knew that didn't share the same culture identities. And kind of what I got from them from feedback was, and this is geared towards obviously where I work, but we do a good job at identifying, right, that we know that there's other cultures. We know that people come from different walks of life, and people think differently than one another. We do a good job at training, especially in the military. Here recently, we culture awareness and stuff like that. We are very good at training, which ties into awareness that we know that each of us have different backgrounds. Communication has got a lot better. One thing I want real quick talk about is DEIA, which is a big topic, and that's just involving diversity, equality, inclusion, and awareness in the military as a whole. What leaders need to improve on, consistency, obviously. It's not just a hot topic, it's be something that is consistently worked on, involved on. Identifying your own challenges, right, from your own culture, stuff like that. Identifying what you need to get, your own challenges that you need to get past. Local connection and community leaders, just getting involved with the community and reaching out to others. Any surprises I learned? To me, it really wasn't too many surprises. Like I said, we've been, and especially in the military, this has been kind of a common theme since I've been in, and that's since 2013. So no real big surprise there. Some personal changes, just I guess just keep working at understanding my biases and things that way, and making sure I go into everything with an open mind to people's different thoughts, stuff like that. Learned so far, so just things that tie back in, culture sensitivity and conflict management. We learned about the high context and low context. One thing I found out was culture fluency, which kind of helps with this. So it means familiarizing yourself with the cultures or natures, how they work, and what they intertwine with on relationships and times of conflict harmony. So just going into it, knowing other cultures and knowing kind of their background will help with that conflict management. One last thing, culture barriers are listening and overcoming them. So kind of a few things I learned. So anxiety and intercultural communication. So just having anxiety about interacting with others, like going into it and not wanting to upset anybody. So just trying to get past those anxieties that you have. Obviously, that's the word. There's ethno-necroticism as a barrier to intellectual communication. So being able to respect others and accepting the differences in cultures. Assumptions and similarities, and intercultural communication. The best way, obviously, is to present an open self in a manner that they do to their daily lives and carry out activities in an orderly fashion. And culture relativism requires an open mind and willingness to consider and even adapt to new values and norms, since cultural relativism asserts the cultural norms and values deriving meaning within a specific social context. So it's just one of those things that we've learned, and just did a little bit more research and how they all tie back into it together so far of the modules that we covered. And that will be the end of my presentation, and until next time.